Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the artist and studio manager here at Baltimore Clayworks, and we are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from my office located on Piscataway and Susquehannock land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Sandra Torres. Originally trained as an architect, Sandra Torres eventually transferred her creative outlet into claywork. Her ceramic education started under the wing of a master ceramist at an experimental studio in Mexico City. She then continued hands-on learning in Southern California in 3 different studios. Her ceramic education was augmented by traveling to China and Mexico to learn about traditional claywork and techniques. An apprenticeship at Studio Peter Stockmans in Genk, Belgium, had a great impact on her work and later directed her to be an artist in resident at the International Ceramic Studio in Kecskemét, Hungary. She currently works at her home studio in Ojai, California. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in for our next artist talk on Tuesday, December 10th with Martina Langton from 1:30 to 2. I will now turn it over to Sandra.
So my name is Sandra Torres. As you know, I actually was born and raised in Mexico City, and I had my first encounter with clay when I was really young. So this is one of my first pieces, and then in Mexico at that point, right now, clay is booming everywhere. But back then, you really couldn't pursue a career in ceramics or something like that. But my mother had a friend who was a ceramic artist, and we used to visit her studio, and I always loved it. I ended up going to architectural school, and I was an architect for several years, and then I got an MBA in Mexico, so I also have a background in business, but somehow clay was always kind of present in my life, and I always miss the artistic side of it and the creative side, and so I started working with clay pretty soon. So I started, as Rebecca said, I started in Mexico City in an experimental studio. It was actually the first studio in Mexico City to have high temperature ceramic ware done. And so they introduced that. And the guy who I work with, Alberto Diaz de Cosillo, he actually worked a lot with the communities that were using glazes that contain lead. So he was working with them to get the same results, but without the lead. So that was very big part of his work. So we travel a lot with him and visited several communities in Michoacan and Oaxaca and like that. So that was a huge impact too. And of course, it's my hometown and my home city. So then I moved to Santa Barbara, California in 2001. And I was really lucky because when I came, I was married then and I couldn't work. So it was a golden opportunity for me to work in absolutely every studio that I could find. So I started working a lot and teaching kids and like that. And then so I had an opportunity to spend some time in China with the Sambao Institute. And so I spent a summer there also learning their processes and working with their porcelain. And then from there, I came back to Santa Barbara and started doing a little bit more work that was influenced by what I learned in China at that time. Then, just like Rebecca mentioned, I went to do an apprentice with Pete Stockmans in Genk in Belgium. And he is an industrial designer who works slip cast mostly and only porcelain, and pretty much all the decorations he does, it's in blue, because he says it's the only true primary color that he could get to work with his style and everything. And it's interesting, he is now, I think, 84. We just visited him this summer and he's super active. You should check it out because he's really amazing guy. So he took me under his wing for a little bit of a month and a half, I think, 2 months. And I learned a lot. I work a lot. I think I worked like so much with the production. So it was really hands-on experience that really marked I consider him my mentor, and his work and he they're very important for me. So I came back to Santa Barbara and then I divorced. So what that opened the opportunities for me to do something else. So I ended up going to Hungary to the International Ceramic Studio in Kachkamet. And I was there for 6 months, and it was amazing because they have like incredible facilities, and they have a full part that's devoted to plaster work. So I kind of refined my skills in mold making there and worked with the porcelain from Heron, which is an amazing porcelain, and did a lot of work. And then I came back to Santa Barbara and spent some time in Mexico before I remarried and came back to Ojai. And my husband, actually, he used to run the ceramic program at Santa Barbara City College, so we had that connection. He just retired now, but anyway, he's also very involved with that. This is some of the work that I did in Mexico City. Okay, so now I live in Ojai, as they say. I have a studio in my garage, and I work with Cone 6 porcelain as an engineered porcelain from Laguna. And I do electric firing and pretty much only use sulfates for my decorations and do a very minimal glaze work on my pieces. And that's because every time I make my pieces, I love them when they're not glazed, and I hate them when they're glazed. So I ended up just skipping the glaze altogether and finding a different way of decorating. So, as I said, I work with porcelain, and I slip cast. This is a picture of my studio. It's very rudimentary. I don't have any big equipment, basically because I cannot fit it. So I work directly from a bucket, and then just go back and forth from the bucket. I don't have like a table for casting or anything like that, which I would love to have one though. Then I don't know how familiar you are with slip casting. So basically I am working with liquid clay instead of with hard clay. And so I use plaster molds that I make myself here in my studio. And then I alter the pieces and I put together different pieces. I work really, really thin, and it's because the clay that I am using actually allows for that kind of process. And slip casting is just a different process that has opportunities and challenges, just like anything else, so like when you throw, you have some big advantages because the clay is more plastic and you can alter a little better, but you cannot go this thin unless unless you trim a lot. So what happens with slip casting is that you actually get the opportunity to go very, very thin. Some slips are more forgiving than others. The slip that I use is not very forgiving, so I need to be really on top of it so that if I'm going to alter or cut or anything, I do it in the perfect time, because otherwise it will crack or it will just kind of break in my hands. I do 4 firings. So the first firing would be just a regular bis fire. And then I use watercolors, they're called chlorides or sulfates. And so what they do is like a stain, but what they do is they actually permeate through the clay, and you need to apply them with on the base square, because otherwise they won't stick. And they're a little finicky, so sometimes, like if you do the same process of of applying the watercolors or the sulfates as you are glazing, usually it doesn't work, because when you glaze, the sulfates dissipate and the color doesn't work. There is a way around it, and I've done it, but I don't get the same kind of watercolor quality that I like. So I do a second firing, which is another base fire. And what that does is that it fixes the color. So after that's done, then I can go ahead and glaze. I use commercial glaze, also from Laguna. So I basically use clear glaze for all my pieces inside, even though the porcelain that I use is very, very tight, so it's not porous. It actually could go without the glaze, but just it's so much nicer to wash something, or use something with silverware that it's being glazed. Then I use some color glaze for little details, as you can see in this picture, and those are also commercial. glazes, I use very basic colors. I kind of have only like 7 colors. And then the other thing, I'm going to go back a little bit to the sulfates and the chlorides. My color palette's actually very, very limited. And it's because I am only using the sulfates that completely fire out with the fires, that they don't have any leaching, like they don't have chrome or any of those kind of things. So it's very, very basic. This piece I have here in this slice has iron sulfate, and iron sulfate is actually something that some people use as a vitamin. Like in Hungary, I used to buy this one at the pharmacy, and this gives a very kind of rich reddish brown. And if you dilute it, then of course it's much lighter. Then I use a lot of cobalt, which is the blue, and I use gold sulfate that actually is pink, a pink color. See, that's nice. And then I use decals for all my designs. What I do with this is that I doodle a lot. So I do my doodles in a piece of paper, in a really nice white paper, and then I scan them. And then for the sepia details, I make those decals in my home, and I can scale them and make them smaller or bigger or like that. And then the other decal that you see here is a gold decal. Those I actually send my files to a company, and they can make the decals. And I usually have very basic, but they also can do color decals and some other things. Okay. So this is my work. I actually, about 2 years ago, started working with a dark porcelain that is it fires to a very, very dark brown that I really love the contrast. And when I put it together with a white slip, it gets this buttery feeling that's really lovely. So I also work in a very, very small scale. I mostly do pieces that you can hold, and I like it. I like the feel of the pieces. I like the intimacy that you can create between a piece that you use to drink or to eat. It's very special, and the way the pieces feel. Like every time I have a show, I always encourage people to pick up the pieces and feel them, because they're really light and they're really soft, and then you get this connection with the piece, and it's like always like holding a cup of tea. It's so intimate that you don't get that kind of connection with bigger work. Okay. So that video usually it takes me about 4 weeks. I also have a full-time job, so my time in the studio is actually very limited and very valuable to me. So it usually takes me about 4 weeks to get a full load of my kiln. My kiln is not a very big one. If I pack it with small pieces, I usually can get an average of 100 pieces in there. So, but between the time I do all the firings and the cooling of the kiln and everything, it's usually a full good month, if everything goes as planned. And then this is it. These are some pieces that I made in Hungary, and you can hear the difference on the time when you slip cast, so you can actually play and make music with that. And that's it. So I'm open for any questions that you might have.